It has officially been confirmed that Blade is getting directly buffed, so I want to take a look at some aspects of his kit I would like to see improved. As someone who has been a Blade main since 1.2, using him in every game mode and every endgame rotation, I wanted to share my wish list for his potential buffs. The easiest buff is just improving his numbers, but that's a bit boring, so a more interesting aspect could be modifying his kit to work similarly to Hu Tao. So for those of you who don't know Hu Tao,
Who? Tao, yeah.
she is a 5-star from Genshin Impact who uses her skill to enter an enhanced state, and then in this enhanced state she converts her HP into attack. Okay, well, convert's not the right word. She increases her attack based on her max HP, and so while you build her with HP, she technically scales off of attack. So what would this mean, and what would this change if Blade were to work like this? When Blade casts his skill, he will enter an enhanced state. Now, in this enhanced state, the new version, he will increase his attack based on his HP. So in essence, the more HP you give him, the more attack he gets in his enhanced state, and then the more damage he'll do. So the multiplier of his attacks, they're going to scale off of attack instead of HP, or instead of the dual scaling it currently has. That means characters like Robin, Ting Yun, and Bronya can still make use of their attack buffs on Blade, and you would still build Blade with HP. This can help make attack scaling supports more relevant on Blade, while keeping his build relatively the same. But they could also just make Blade fully HP scaling, though it would be less interesting, and currently they don't have any HP buffing supports, outside of like Lynx, who is really, really weak. The second change I would like to see is more quality of life, rather than an outright power increase, though I would also like to see a power increase. So things I'm talking about are allowing his follow-up stacks to overcap, so that you can get things like 6 out of 5 or 7 out of 5, and then they would carry over. For example, if you're running him with Jade and he's at 4 out of 5, the next attack will bring him to 6 out of 5, and then after he launches his follow-up attack, you'll be left at 1 out of 5. Another thing would be giving him CC immunity when in the enhanced state, so that he won't get stunned. Blade is canonically immune to death, and yet the only gameplay elements that keep him alive are his follow-up attacks and his ultimate, both of which cannot be accessed when he's stunned. So either give him CC immunity, or if that's too busted, make it so that at least his follow-up attack can launch even if he's stunned. The third quality of life I would like on Blade would be a taunt. The most annoying thing outside of Blade being stunned is when the enemies hit anyone else but Blade. I have a lot of showcases where Blade is seemingly invisible to the enemies and never gets hit, and it's frustrating when it happens. Blade's kit is designed to take damage, and yet the only way to achieve this is by using Yun Li's Light Cone on Blade, and that doesn't seem right. And I'm unsure what the best way to implement a taunt is, but personally I think rather than having it in Blade's kit, if you introduce a 5-star version of Lynx, that could be a way to implement it, because it's not always that you want to taunt on Blade. Sometimes you do want the supporters to get hit for energy. It's just the consistency of a taunt is nice. And also, taunts only work if Blade is immune to CC. Because if Blade gets stunned and he's taunted, it just means he dies faster. So I would not want to taunt unless Blade has some way to resist crowd control. Also, for the solo Blade enjoyers, the taunt doesn't matter that much, and they would much rather see CC immunity, because that would make much more of a difference. And so that's why my number one quality of life request for Blade is the CC immunity. So in terms of priority of quality of life requests, CC immunity ranks top priority, and then it would be the overcapping of his stacks just for quality of life. And then finally the taunt would be the nice to have, but the thing is I personally don't know where to put it if you were to introduce it. It's hard to fit it in his base kit without overloading it. It's hard to put it on his light cone because they didn't say they would buff the light cones. And there's no news about his support that will provide a taunt, so I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And also, for those of you who have noticed, I specify CC immunity and not effect res, because effect res would prevent things like the DOT status. And Blade actually wants to be hit with a bunch of DOTs because they help generate more HP drain stacks. So too much effect res would kill his stack generation. For example, when you're fighting Kafka, she implants a lot of DOTs on you. If you have effect res, you would resist all of those. But if you have CC immunity against Kafka, you could get inflicted with DOTs, but it would prevent Kafka's domination. So you get the best of both worlds where you keep the DOTs, but you prevent the domination. So what I'm asking for is not effect res. That won't work on Blade, but rather immunity to crowd control, similar to what Maide gets in his Vendetta state, and then similar to what I believe Yunli has in her parry stance. I really don't think Blade needs much more than this to make him in line with where I personally want him to be, but another idea I had is potentially making it so that his enhanced basic attacks refund skill points. Blade, right now by design, is skill point negative. There's no way for him to generate skill points by himself. This means you need a skill point generator on your team, and currently the best teammates for him aren't the best skill point generators because, okay, well, I can't say they aren't the best, but they all have issues. So you have Tribby, who is very slow, so her generation is really slow, so if you have a really fast Blade, she might not be able to keep up. You have Sparkle, who is an old and outdated unit. She doesn't suck, but making her work, you have to really be dedicated to Sparkle, and then even then she'll get outperformed by other characters. And then you have Sunday, who is a really strong character with Blade, but you need a signature light cone to be skill point positive, so that means more investment into Sunday himself. So if Blade's enhanced basic attack could grant skill points, that would make life really easy, but it would also be kind of broken. So that's why I'm not sure if this is something that'll ever happen, but I think with QQ, her skill points on her enhanced basic attacks are locked behind an Eidolon. So maybe you can lock this one behind an Eidolon for Blade as well. And I'm looking at the current Eidolons, and Eidolon 2 and 4 are kind of mid, so maybe put it on like Eidolon 2. But then that would incentivize more people to pull for E2. But now that he's on the 50-50 banner, maybe it's not so bad. Anyways, whatever Hoyo decides to do with Blade, I really hope it's not just a numbers bump, because there's so much potential in Blade's kit for nice quality of life. And I think the proposed ideas in this video would greatly improve the experience of playing Blade.